All right, welcome back everybody to day two of Foundations of Programming. Yesterday we didn't really finish off. We ended up talking about Git and GitHub. We talked about the differences between both of these, as well as some commands to navigate with Git. The very first couple commands that we talked about was how to initialize Git within your virtual machine, which is known as your local remote repository. We talked about how we can add changes or additions of new files to our stationery using the command of git add. We talked about committing, creating snapshots of our files, changes into our Git folder with a message. Talked about ways of how to check the status and log of our history while working with Git, as well as unstaging changes, and then finally pushing to a remote repository. Let me go ahead and navigate to my GitHub here real quick. Yesterday, we used the example repository. We created one here on GitHub first without any kind of files. We didn't use a README. We kept it very simple. And we saw yesterday, it gave us a step-by-step walkthrough of how to connect our Git repository to our GitHub repository. Once again, reiterating about what we talked about yesterday, Git and GitHub are two different things, right? They are at their own timeline pretty much. So they're not talking when you first create them. So it's important that when you are trying to link your local repository on your computer to something on GitHub, you make that connection, right? Um, we saw that yesterday. Um, let's go ahead and open up that file from yesterday. So I highly recommend for all of you guys, make sure that you start formatting your directories before you guys get into your immersive program because it can become very annoying once you guys start working with hundreds of different files. But here we have the Git example. We can go ahead and cd into that repository. I see here I have a couple things here. I'm going to open this up in VS Code using the code command. Give it a second. There we go. Now, I haven't touched this in yesterday's class. So I had to open it up. Um, and what if this was an active program that I was working on? Well, how can I start back up from where I left off? Well, really, I would do exactly what I just did. I would open up my terminal, go to where my project is located at, and then I would use my code command to open it up in VS Code, and it brings me to the location of where my project is. Now, I'm ready to continue working on here. So for me to get back to where I was, I'm going to want to go ahead and initialize Git again. All right, so I'm going to use the command of Git init. And notice that unlike yesterday where we got that long message, a bunch of help messages, here it just says reinitializing existing Git repository. Now, where does the Git repository exist? We saw it yesterday when I opened up my documents folder, the file explorer for my computer. I saw where the Git folder was created. And it was created inside of my folder Git example. And that's very important, right? If I want to continue using this Git repository for this specific folder Git example, I have to run Git init while within here. If I were, hypothetically speaking, to cd out of here and go a level up, and I try to do Git init from here, this will initialize a whole different Git session because it is now in a different level, in a different directory than I was earlier. So if the Git session was created inside of my Git example folder, then I want to go back in there and use Git init to reinitialize it, right? That Git init folder is going to keep track of the snapshots of that current directory that I'm working on, right? So that's very important. Awesome. So that was our quick little recap of Git init. here of repository, we saw that we were able to connect these together. Uh, we created this repository on our computer first. Uh, well, not really first, but separately, right? The repository on GitHub was created separately as well. Once we were ready to link this together, I pushed it up from my VS Code up to GitHub using the command of get remote origin and then passed in that URL. The URL they gave us yesterday within the terminal wasn't something just random. It's specifically related to this Git repository. Now, where does that URL come from? Well, let's say I created a README here and I didn't get that nice little message to tell me what the URL path was. I can get that URL path from clicking this green button and it gives me a drop down and it gives me the options of cloning this repository or even give me a URL. Here's that URL that was presented to me during the instruction portion on GitHub. This is a URL that we saw that we use on the command of get remote origin. And then I had to put this URL in there. So this is where the URL came from. You can also use this URL to clone this, which we will be seeing how we work with clone repositories in a little bit. But this is a very helpful tool. If you were in intro to coding, this button might seem a little familiar. We use this to use code spaces, probably something like that, right? So very helpful tool, which is why you see it highlighted in green. Welcome, Alex. But all right, let's go ahead and move forward. So we went through the example of pushing to GitHub. That's awesome. So we should all have a general understanding of the entire process. We even drew a nice little board, right? So real quickly here, this is our Git, right? And down here is our GitHub, right? So the version control for Git is different than the version control on GitHub. Um, don't the size here is it misinterprets really what it really is. I just needed all this extra space. But in Git, there's a whole flow, right? We have VS Code making changes, right? All these little blocks represent every change I made. It might be a new line, might be some more code, might be new files. It doesn't matter. It just represents changes. As I'm making changes, I use git add with a period to put them in a staging area. And then git commit boxes them up, puts them in a folder. Here, the analogy is a box truck. And then git push sends that box truck all the way to GitHub to distribute it to the GitHub repository, right? It's kind of how like the visual representation of how the Git flow works. I like doing stuff like this because it helps me really understand the concept instead of just basic written commands. But this is really how it actually works from start to finish. All right. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next part of working with Git. Actually, we have a student practice here. Did anyone get the opportunity to give this a try? Were you guys able to work with me yesterday? Would you guys like to take 10 minutes to give this a genuine try before we move on? Um, did anyone try and run into issues? Let's hear some feedback. Whether you tried it, didn't try it.
I created the example repository just to see what happened, but it was pretty straightforward with the instructions they give. So.
Awesome. Alex?
Yesterday I was trying to follow along, and when I got into the uh Git repository or Git example,
Uh-huh.
I was stuck in this master area. It kept saying Git master, and then I was trying to follow the commands, but I seem to have been stuck in some type of, I don't know if I would call it like a program or something that I was having a hard time exiting out of and manipulating.
Huh. Okay. Yeah,
I was chalking it up because I hadn't finished Install Fest yet, so maybe things weren't working as they should have.
maybe that I think you had not installed Git. We'll give it a try during the break and see if anything changes. Uh,
Sounds good.
if any point you feel confused throughout the next part, let me know and we can stop, right?
Got
But
it.
all right, so we talked about the initial flow, right? Creating a new project, right? We talked about the repository and GitHub and then linking them together. Now, let's talk about the ongoing process of you working through here, right? Or what happens if you want to collaborate with other people? Let's say Thomas decides to join in with me and he's like, hey, Roger, I would like to help you with your website. Where do you need help with? And I'm like, all right, Thomas, I could use a nice contact page, right? I'm really busy right now working with the login info. Could you go ahead and work on a contact page while I work on the login page? Absolutely. So how do we do that, right? Well, this is where the feature of branches comes into play and why it could be very helpful. And it's not just if you are working with other collaborators, it also helps even if you're working on your own. That way you can separate different features or different parts of your project into individual branches to keep the work separate in the event you break something, right? So, hypothetically speaking, right now, I have a general quote unquote the skeleton of my project. Really, there's nothing here, but let's just say I have a basic foundation. I have like my basic page. It's not pretty, but I'm ready to add some new features onto this website. So, what I need to do is I need to be able to create a branch so I can branch off from my original project and work on this new feature, right? So, what is a branch, right? Well, a branch is a Git feature that allows us to quite literally branch off of our main code base and try something out, right? So this goes back to the original imagery that we saw at the beginning of the lecture that showed a timeline, right? Here is the original timeline. We have the master branch, or what like GitHub likes to call it, the main branch, and it shows the timeline of progress of this project from start to finish. And at some point during this timeline, it branches off into a different version, right? And this is that timeline for that new feature. Uh, Notice that this from left to right, that's the representation of time, and this time is progressing. There's different branches where new things are happening, but at the end of the day, they all come back and meet back in the master branch. And we're going to talk about how we can do that so we can separate the work and then bring it back together to one conjoined project, right? And the very first command that you need to know is going to be how to check out a branch. And really, by check out, really, we're creating a branch. Uh, they should just call it create, but for whatever reason, they gave it the name of checkout, right? So it's git checkout dash b dash b. You can kind of already make an educational guess. It stands for branch. We're checking out a new branch, and then we pass in the branch name. This will create a new branch where you can make changes without affecting the rest of your code, right? So let's give that a try. So here is my VS Code. Before we check out a whole branch, you guys saw me use the command called git branch yesterday. The git branch, it's a git command that quite literally shows you your branches and what active branch you are working on. Because right now there's only one branch. It's just the trunk itself, right? The main branch. We want to see one item here. It's highlighted in green with an asterisk to the left, right? So if you ever want to see what branch you are currently on, the git branch command is your friend. This is very similar to using the pwd print working directory in your terminal to show you where you're located at. That's kind of what you're doing here. You're printing out where you are on your project. What branch are you currently working on? And it's very important that you know this because when you're creating new branches, you're merging branches, you're pushing up changes, you need to know what you're pushing up from. You do not want to push into the main branch or start working from the main branch because now, let's say you've been working on your main branch for 2 hours. Now you have all this work on a branch that it shouldn't be on, right? So let's create a new branch. We're gonna say git checkout dash b, and then we'll call this new feature 2, or we'll say new feature 1, right? And it's gonna say switch to a new branch, and then it gives me my branch name. Well, let's just make sure we're on the correct branch. Let's go ahead and use the git branch command. And I see here now that I get a list of two different things, main and new feature one. Notice that right now, new feature one is the one that's highlighted in green with the asterisk to the left, specifying that this is the active branch I am working on. So we just created a branch and then immediately switches over. Now, another reason why it's important to use the get branch command is because when you create a new branch, it's going to create it from whatever active branch you are currently on. So be aware of that, right? So you want to move to the main branch, create a branch from there. This will switch you over. Sometimes when you open up your VS Code, it by default might start you off in the main branch. So make sure you check what branch you're on and switch over. So it's always important to understand where you are in regards to your computer. Awesome. Now, I am currently working in my main branch, and nothing really changed, right? Doesn't look like anything changed, but let's go ahead and start making some changes. So currently, my terminal is tracking that in my VS Code, I am working on the new feature one branch. So let's go ahead and add a new file while we're in here. I'm going to say example.py. I'm going to print out a message here. This is my first official branch. And really, well, I put in here, it doesn't really matter. I just want to add some text in here. But I have now added a new file. I have made changes to this project, right? I've made progress, right? Quote unquote. So let's say I've been working for about an hour or two. I'm ready to kind of send this up to GitHub. I'm gonna go ahead and say git add because I need to put it in the staging area. I don't see any feedback, but if I say git status, I can see what is in the staging area and what needs to be committed. Hypothetically speaking, I'm ready to commit. So I'm gonna say git commit. And I'm giving a message that says my first new feature, right? It's going to commit that change, right? That means it took a snapshot and it saved it in my directory for Git on my computer, right? I'm ready to push. I'm gonna say git push, and notice what's gonna happen. I'm gonna get an error. It's gonna say the current branch, new feature one, has no upstream branch. To push the current branch and set the remote as upstream, use, and it gives me the command that I need to use. So what happened? I thought I was connected. Yes and no. My main branch was connected to my main branch on GitHub, right? So main on Git was connected to main on GitHub. But on my Git, I created a new branch called new feature one. It's a deviation from the original. That has no connection to GitHub. So I now have to connect that to GitHub, to a branch on GitHub, right? If I say git branch, I can see my branches exist in here. But if I check GitHub and I refresh this, if you guys recall yesterday's walkthrough, I told you this is where you can check your branches. If I press this, I don't see an additional branch, right? GitHub is not tracking that second branch. Only Git is. It only exists on my computer, right? There is no upstream. There's nothing up here. Nothing's connected for that additional branch. So my VS Code terminal was able to identify that. It told me like, yo, this doesn't exist. You got to connect them. So quite literally, I can just go ahead and copy this code right here. It's going to say git push, and then this command here is going to set it upstream to where my origin is at and give it a new branch called new feature one. And I can copy and paste this, and it's going to connect this, create a new branch on GitHub, and link them together. Notice it says here, branch new feature one is set up to track in your origin / new feature one. If I return to my GitHub on my browser, notice I get something new. Something popped up and I didn't realize it, right? But it says here, new feature one had recent pushes 28 seconds ago. Compare and pull request. If I check the branches, the new feature one branch is now here. It automatically populated. If it didn't populate for you, just refresh your browser. But you should see a change now on your GitHub, right? Because your Git it set it upstream, it created a branch for it, and connected them together. I realize I've been talking for a while, so who has any questions?
When you connect that new branch to from Git to GitHub, it also pushes.
Yes. Notice the command that I used. I said git push
Oh, okay.
where you're pushing to. Or
Right.
when you push, I want you to set it upstream. So send it back up to GitHub, connect it to your origin, and in your origin, create a new branch called new feature one. That's what's gonna be set upstream. Make sense?
Got it.
Anybody else? Awesome. Okay, so let's come back here. Actually, no, let's stay down here. I'm gonna stay in my VS Code. So I just pushed up to GitHub. We'll talk about GitHub in a little bit. Let's stay here on my VS Code for a second. I pushed up to GitHub. I know the commits in GitHub. Now I'm gonna clear this up for the sake of having something to work with. What branch am I on? I'm still in new feature one. I want to show you the difference between main and new feature one. If I want to switch back to main, how do we do that? Well, to create a new branch, I said git checkout dash b and then the name of the branch. To switch to a new branch, you say git checkout and then what branch you want to switch over to. You don't put the dash b. And when I do that, I switch to branch main. And notice what happened. Look at my VS Code. The Python file I had open, it says deleted. There's a line through it. It's highlighted in red. And when I look at my file explorer, it's not here. Well, why is that? Well, because my main branch doesn't have that file. That file was created in the feature branch, right? That new feature one branch that I created, that's where that file exists. So when I switched over to main, it went back to the state of what main was. It doesn't know what progress new feature one has. It's only tracking main. I can go back by saying git checkout new feature one, and notice that the example.py file repopulates here. So these are two different versions, right? Main was left unaffected. When I created that new feature one, it copied everything from main. I was able to make progress in there by creating new files, new code. I was able to push that to a branch on GitHub, all while not affecting my main branch. Do I have any questions? Thomas, you've been very quiet, my friend. Any questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Right on. All right, so let's go ahead and Thomas, you asked you have to use git init each time before working on your file. Yeah, you want to reinitialize that change. You might get some weird functionality. So just obviously just reinitialize your git init. That way, you can continue keeping track of your progress. Also, if you're using GitHub as a version control on a project, you want to make sure that before you start working, you're working on the correct branch. So yeah, you do want to check git init, check what branch you're on, switch to it. Also, if it's an active project that you're collaborating with other people, you might want to pull the updates from GitHub to make sure you're up to date, which we will talk about in a little bit. But all right, let's go ahead and talk about what happened when I pushed up from the new feature one branch, right? So I switched back to that new branch, right? I am now on new feature one. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is this push right here that happened earlier. So I pushed up to GitHub. Obviously, we already established that my main branch is not affected, right? It did create a new branch on GitHub called New Feature One, and I got this notification that says New Feature One had recent pushes 28 seconds ago. We didn't get this notification yesterday. Yesterday, when I pushed up to main branch, it automatically populated in the main branch. I had no say about comparing and pull requests like you see here. It just automatically pushed it up, and that was it. I can switch over to new feature one. The new feature one, here it is. I see the changes to it. Notice that the example.py repopulated here. It even tells me this branch is one commit ahead of main. So it's tracking its progress against the main branch. It's well aware. I can switch back to main, and I no longer see that example.py. Well, let's go ahead and press this button that we see here that says new feature 1 had recent pushes 6 minutes ago. Let's press this. When we do this, it's going to bring us to this page that says open a pull request. So what is this? Well, GitHub, like most version control systems, they have safety checks, right? Checkpoints that you have to go through. When you create a new feature and you're pushing to that new feature, it's not going to merge into your main branch automatically. That's a safety feature. That's the whole purpose for having multiple branches. The last thing we want to do is automatically merge something new into the main project and mess everything up if it doesn't work, right? The beauty of a version control system is that we're able to compare and contrast two different branches and see how well they work together. We can see what it was before and what's going to be new, what got deleted, what's being added, what's changing. And that's what a pull request is. It's quite literally you are putting in some kind of a ticket almost, right, to somebody on your organization or to yourself, because right now I'm just working on my own with this project. But you are requesting to be able to merge of these two branches together. So it says create a new pull request by comparing changes across two branches. So here is the next part down. We see that the base is main. Notice the arrow. So something is going into main. Well, what's going into main? A new feature 1. So I am trying to merge a new feature 1 and push it inside of main. Notice I'm trying to pull the changes into my main branch. If I had other branches, I could definitely change what I'm trying to merge into if I wanted to. But because I only have 2 by default, it put those in here. But this is where you put where you want to pull these changes into. This is how you bring back the branches like we saw earlier, right here, where you start merging the branch back into the main timeline. That's what we're doing here, right? So when you put in a pull request, it's quite literally you're putting some kind of a ticket, you give it a title, right? And you can add a description, right? Let's say back to the analogy that Thomas and I have where he's creating a contact page. This could be Thomas trying to merge that contact page. So you could be something like created contact page, added CSS, linked the contact form to email abc123@gmail.com. Something random, right? This is where he can come down to add the description, add the changes. He's able to add pictures if he wanted to. You could add code in here as well. Right, I can add a code block. So this is how it will look like to the other user. So in case you want to discuss code within here, you can say, hey, I changed this code to be this code. You could add like a little code snippet here. So when they see it, they can see like a before and after. If you want to talk about something very specifically. So it is a markdown description page that you can add stuff to. That way it gives that other person, whoever's going to approve your pull request, it gives them some kind of context before they actually start looking at it. Now, within this pull request, you also have the ability to see what changed, right? You scroll down, you see here showing one changed file with one addition. So I have a new file, example.py, and I got something new here, which is the print statement. Notice it's in green. It's telling me that something was added. So it quite literally shows you what the change was. It even shows you the commit history. So here's the commit timeline. Here's the commit message I added. Here's the commit code, right? In case I ever want to go back to a previous commit, there's the commit details. Yeah, so it's all here, right? Um,
Quick,
w-
quick question about that.
quick answer.
When it shows you the differences, how does it determine the difference? Like if I created a class and outputted the object, since they're considered different objects, if it's outputting different objects, will that always show up as a change or like different outputs for a function or
It's gonna give you the difference of code and files. So if you change the line, if you change formatting, it's gonna show you what changed, where it was deleted, what was added. Does that make sense? Are you trying like it's not gonna actually show you like what changed functionality wise. It's not that smart. This is why you require to know what the heck you're reading. You can't just look at this code and say, "Oh, it looks good to me." You need to know that this function is gonna work.
right, yeah. So it's not going to return like data assignments. It's just going to return like the actual, like
The
if you
actual
change the function itself.
Right, the actual text
Okay.
itself. It's right. So that's a very good question. Uh, it won't know if the function works or not. Your function might not work at all. This might just be garbage code. Absolutely. Uh, so be aware that it doesn't know. It's just to show you whoever you're working with, so they can review what you changes you made to the files. Right. This is not test against the actual functionality of the code. It's just changing the actual text content, the file content itself. Make sense?
Yeah.
How extensive is that? Like, would that be how many lines of code would that show you down there if there were, let's say, 40 lines of code changes? They're going to show you all 40 of them?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'll try to find some of my own projects that I work with. So I can show you like different commits and pull requests. Yeah, it'll show you all the files. As many files and lines that you did for that commit, it'll show you all. You'll be scrolling for a hot minute. Um, so yeah, absolutely. Just right now, I only created one file and added one line of code, so it's very, very simplified. But all right, so I'm ready to make this pull request. Notice on the right side we have a couple things like reviewers, assignees. Um, you are able to add people to this, right? Typically, you might have people that you need to get approved, right? If you're working a team, you'll probably have your team lead approve your pull requests. Whoever your senior software engineer is, he might be doing this for you. You're not just going to go ahead and pull everything directly into the code base. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Someone's going to review your code. You're going to have roadblocks that you have to go through. Reviewers that have to approve this. So I would create this pull request. I would assign the reviewer and the assignees, and they would get an email notification, some kind of notification, letting them know, hey, so and so put in the pull request, and then like the information, right? They will be able to go to that pull request, and it will look something fairly similar to this, right? It'll have like the name of the pull request. You want to merge one commit into main from new feature. It will have everything. It'll tell you how many files were changed, even the commit history. So that person will be able to click files change and they can scroll through the files change. Um, they'll see the conversation, that description thing you added. They can actively talk to you. There could be a chain of messages where you can just go back and forth and talk through here as changes are being made before a pull request is closed out or approved. So there is a chain here where you can be talking and stuff. And then right now, it's automatically letting me merge this. But if you have people assigned to this or restrictions that requires like it requires one approval or two approvals before the merge is allowed to, it'll tell you 1 out of 2 people require or 0 out of 2 people have been approved. Um, and it tells you here too what you can do, whatever. It will tell you something like this where it says no conflicts with base branch. This is not always accurate. GitHub would try to see if there's any conflicts of files, if there's corrupted code. It is not reliable. Just be aware that um, I had a project I was working with specifically with game development. We were creating a game. And some of the files we were working with were sprite sheets. Anyone familiar here with like games or sprite sheets or stuff like that?
Yeah.
Okay, at least one person. Well, they're pretty much picture files. Well, GitHub doesn't work really well with picture files, especially game engines, and they were getting corrupted. So that was a pain, right? We had to recreate a lot of the work because they were getting corrupted. Um, even though it said like there was no conflicts. So depends on what you're working on. You might have some issues, specifically some of these specific files that aren't necessarily text files, uh, are easy to get messed up with. But I don't have any assignings, any reviewers. It's just me working here, so I can merge this by myself. When you merge this, you get add more description or whatever, and I can go ahead and just confirm this merge, and then
Are
it.
Is there a way to like test the code before you merge it? Since you said it's not like super smart, can't really tell you if it's going to corrupt anything. Like, are you able to open up the file and then like, copy and paste and kind of test it yourself before you merge, or you just got to keep your fingers crossed kind of situation?
Yeah, I could most definitely copy this branch down to my computer and open it up on my computer and see if it works and test it out myself. Um, you can actually open this up in a code space. Create code space of new feature. So for those of you who went to intro coding, you can open this up in VS Code and see how it works. And mess around with it with a code space. So that's really what code spaces was made for. But yeah, you can most definitely do that. If that answers your question. Um, but yeah, does that answer your question? Typically,
Yeah,
you could most definitely. It depends on what type of program you're working, project. Typically, you'll also have like multiple branches. You might have like a test branch, like a dev branch, a deployment branch. You'll have different safety precautions to prevent something breaking down.
I
yeah,
have a
that
question.
makes sense.
Yes, with the question.
So let's say you do a push and then you realize, oh crap, I forgot to save that, and then you do another push 5 minutes later. Is that going to generate two pull requests, or will the second one override the first one?
A pull request. Notice there's commits here. The pull request is from branch to branch. That branch is going to merge everything from the commits. So if you keep pushing up to that branch, it'll be added within here in the commit history. So you don't have to make another pull request. It should automatically be added to that pull request.
Got it. Okay.
Stand by. I'll be real quick. I'm a little sick, so I got to clear up my nose. Give me a second.
Hey Thomas, I was able to copy a whole deck from Inky last night and then move it to my laptop so that you can share it. Just wanted to give you the heads up. I was able to do that.
Nice. Okay, so you were able to retain like full functionality of over all your cards, or did it like reset how
Yeah,
you
so there's two different.
ranked?
There were two different file types. So like you have to do it by deck, or you can do it by card. And then when you do the export, you want to choose the APKG instead of the COLPKG.
Gotcha. Okay.
If you do that, then and I emailed it to myself and was able to do it via email. So
Okay, nice.
Where are y'all getting these the decks from?
You got to make them yourself. And that's
Oh, I
why
see.
I was asking, because
yeah,
I thought we might, once the actual class started, or even during this one, we might be able to create like a class type of flashcard system and then just share it with each other.
Right. Okay. Got it.
After I merged it, I have the opportunity to delete the branch if I wanted to. If you're not going to be working on it, just delete it. But yeah, you're able to keep it there. Let's go ahead and see what happened. Right, we are inside of our new feature one branch. Right, let's go ahead and check out main. What happened? What's going on with my file explorer? Nothing here. Right, it's still the same. Well, let's check back to the GitHub. On GitHub, here's my main branch. Notice there is a change here, my main branch. It says the merge pull request number one from, R the Lagarza 12, new feature one, 4 minutes ago. I also see my example.py file here 22 minutes ago. You even see here the commit message, my first new feature. So on GitHub, I was successful. I was able to merge new feature into main. Main is updated on GitHub. Main is tracking that. Git is not. Right. So when I went back to my computer and I switched over to my main branch, it's not tracking anything. Right. So this goes back to what I mentioned to you guys earlier. Whenever you guys are ready to work again, it's always important that you pull your, any changes, right? That might be there on your computer for GitHub to Git, right? So how do we do that? Well, now that I'm in main, uh, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say git pull origin main. So I've been pushing this entire time, but now I want to pull from the origin main. And then press enter. Notice that it goes through a lot of stuff here. I see fast forward, example.py, one plus, one file change, one insertion, create mode. I got the new file here. It pretty much fast forward my main branch to match what the origin main branch on GitHub is at, right? So that's kind of how you update these things. Now, if I switch over to Git checkout new feature one branch, they're all the same. I can go back to my main branch. They're the same. They're both up to date, right? Because the main pulled the changes from new feature on GitHub, and I came back to my Git and I pulled the updates from main. So everything's talking. They're all up to date. They're all working. And that's the flow of making changes and pushing to GitHub using branches. Do I have any question? All right, cool. So we saw git checkout beam, which creates a new branch where you can make changes without affecting the rest of your code. We went over git checkout and the name of the branch, which switches to an already existing branch. Um, Here is another way of how you can merge stuff. You can use the command git merge, which is going to add the changes from another branch to the main branch. Now, you want to use this sparingly uh, for the fact that, you know, you don't want to merge something into your main branch without reviewing the code. So this is a more direct route. So all of your code from one branch will go directly to the main branch if you do it this way. So be aware of that. But there is different ways of merging things together. I like using the whole pull request way of working. That's typically how you're gonna work in a real life scenario. You're not just gonna merge directly into your main branch, but this is one way of merging to it. All right. Now, your GitHub. Let's talk a little bit about your GitHub. So I think you guys saw mine already. Let me go to my GitHub home. It's nothing crazy, but your GitHub is something that your employers are going to be looking over. Anyone had MySpace back in the day? I know you did, Tony. I could have guessed it myself. Oh yeah. You guys remember the MySpace days where you will like edit your profile page to play music when people join your MySpace page in the moment they walked into it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the more
old
stuff
school.
you made happen, the more
Mm-hmm.
popular you were, the better
Yeah.
you were.
You had like your top friends list and show you who your best friends. Stuff like that. Well, we're going back to those days, kind of, right? You want to make sure that you take some time to update your GitHub. Now, right now, it doesn't matter. I'm talking about later, once you get close to the graduating. One of the things that most software developer roles are going to ask is going to be for your GitHub, right? They'll come to your GitHub. They're going to look at your homepage. They're going to check out your repositories. They're gonna check your contributions. This is a big one here. Contributions. So for those of you who are new to GitHub, when working on GitHub, you have this little box that have multiple little boxes in it. They're separated by months and weeks. Right? Every column is a week. Each individual box is a day, and they're supposed to represent the years. I've had some good years, some bad years. But when you work, when you're actively contributing to GitHub repositories, other projects, it's gonna light up one of these squares for that date. Notice here's a chart. The greener it is, or the brighter greener it is, it's better representation, the more you contributed specifically to that date. Now, what are the contributions? Well, here's a little chart. You can see code review, issues, pull requests, and commits. So this is the ways that you can contribute on your GitHub, whether you're reviewing other people's code, you're solving issues, you're creating pull requests, or you're committing. Most of my work involves committing stuff because I working on curriculum work for Platoon, stuff like that. So uh, that's what this work is, right? How much you contribute well on GitHub, how active you are. This is the representation for this year. I made it look cool by having the snake game. Um, but here is where you talk a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you're working on, stuff like that, how to contact you. Um, People like to put their stacks, like what software do you like to use, what do you use, Python, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, React, Django, PostgreSQL, Nginx, PyTorch, so on and so forth, right? Um, I have some statistics. This is pulling the statistics from my repositories, my code files, and how much code I use of each. I'm pretty even across the board for Python and JavaScript. I use them just evenly. So it's going to check all your project and how much of each language it does. I have some YouTube channels, my Gmail, LinkedIn. Um, this is kind of like a pretty straightforward and standard version of how this looks like. There's a lot of tutorials that help you format your GitHub. There's no right or wrong answer. Just make it visually appealing and welcoming to a recruiter. Here's going to be some examples um, of GitHubs. This is the original instructor from Foundations Programming. He used to be the old instructor about 2 years ago. So he's the one that created the slide. This is his Guillermo. He's actually the one that gave you your live technical assessment. So this is his at that time. I don't know how it looks like now. These are some that he found on Google. So notice they're pretty accurate to the ones I had as well, right? Who you are, your stacks, front end, back end, some DevOps stuff. Same thing here, languages and tools. It talks about how much of each work they do. Here's somebody else's. Once again, quick introduction, who they are, some quick facts, what they work on, some tools they use. So this is pretty much accurate across the board for most people of how their GitHub look like. So this kind of what you should be reaching for, right? This is Guillermo's stats, I think, before he got his job with Amazon. Notice how freaking bright this is. There's like almost like no dark spot besides the beginning of the year. He has it in here because when he was teaching this class, he always talked about this story. He had a job interview where the interviewer was completely amazed at his GitHub repository. He was amazed at his contributions. 1,000 contributions in 2021. He swears on it that he believes he only got that job because of this right here, his streak on GitHub. So I'm not saying you need to do this, but they do look at it, right? They do take into account. Now, it's not a make or break. I want to say that it's not a make or break. Why? Right? Well, because there's people who work in software development roles that don't contribute to GitHub. So this might be black. All this might be black. But they actually have real work experience to show for it. So this is not a make or break. just know that it could look good. He believes it made a difference for his job interview for that specific role. Um, the longest streak was 400 days of contribution. So just keep that in mind. Like once again, it's not a make or break, but it looks nice, and it might be that the extra push that might decide between you and somebody else. So just be aware of it. Doesn't mean you won't get a job if you don't look like this. It just looks nice. Make sense? All right. So last part for GitHub before we go into our break. So we talked about how to create a repository and link it to your project to our computer. Now let's talk about cloning and the part that you guys care about. What I need you to do is I need you to create a folder in your root directory for your machine and call it FOP. Um, when you're in that folder, what you're gonna do is I want you to open up the Slack. Actually, I'll give it to you. I'm gonna send it to you in the Zoom channel chat. That is a link to the repository for Foundations of Programming. This is gonna be the curriculum that we're gonna be working on. It is subject to change, so be aware of that. Where I got that link is from here. I click on code and I can go to local and I can copy this URL here. This is to clone the GitHub repository. So I'm gonna say git clone. I'm gonna run this command wherever I want to clone this repository at. I'm gonna copy it inside my FOP folder. I'm gonna say git clone, and then I'm gonna copy and paste it by pressing Control V into my terminal, and I'm gonna press enter. And it's going to clone the Foundations of Programming repository down to my computer. I can type ls, and I see it in here. Let me just go ahead and rename it. I'm gonna rename it to FOP Fall 2025. There we go. Then I'm gonna open it up. It'll take a little bit. Give me a second. But here it is. Here is my repository. Everything that we're gonna be doing here is gonna come straight from here. We'll have lectures using the PowerPoints, and then we'll come here to do the actual assignments. So make sure you guys clone down the repository. This is your own copy, so you guys can mess with it as much as you want. When I make changes to it, I'll tell you to do a pull request, or I'm sorry, a git pull or git fetch from GitHub, so you can update it. But for now, this is all you need. So here we are going to skip the git pair since there's only 3 of us. The git pair assignment is the GitHub assignment where we practice creating a repository. Most of you guys already took care of it. I'll take care of Alex in a bit, but we're gonna skip that and we're gonna go into lesson 1 in a little bit, or lesson 2 as actually. But that should be the GitHub repository clone for the rest of the class, right? And that's going to conclude our lesson 1 lecture. Do I have any questions about anything that we have covered today so far?
Can you go over what you just did once you pulled it from GitHub though? Because I'm working on 2 different computers at the moment, so I'm trying to.
Sure.
I had to go find that link.
So the link can be found in the Slack channel as well. No,
I've got it now. I just don't know how to get it onto my terminal.
Yeah. So on your terminal, you're going to go somewhere that you want to copy it down to. I have a folder here called FOP. So I CD'd into it, right? So I said CD FOP. I already cloned it here, but while you're in that folder that you want to clone it to, you're gonna say git clone and then Control V to paste the link in here. And this is gonna clone that repository to your computer. It's gonna clone it as FOP, capital F, lowercase o, capital P. It's gonna look like the title of the repository. I renamed it because I didn't like that name, and I called it FOP Fall 2025. So you can rename it if you want. How did I rename it? I'm using this command here. I use the MV command, which move, right? I wanted to move FOP into FOP-fall 2025. So this is how I renamed it myself. So you guys can do that if you like. I made you guys create a directory for FOP because in case you want to make other folders, files, and so on and so forth. That way you have everything consolidated. Once you get to the immersive program, you're going to be working with a lot of different files and folders, and it can get very messy. So to make sure that you stay nice and neat. But all right. Time is 6:31. Let's go ahead and come back at 6:41, and we're going to start on lesson 2. I will see you guys in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to go ahead and continue with our lessons. Today, we are starting lesson 2, how the internet works, and we shall be starting HTML. So, this is a very, very brief overview of how the internet works. Mainly for people who've never been around computers, because we get them, believe it or not. And then we're going to go straight into HTML. Who here has experience working with HTML? Okay.
Very minor.
Very minor. Okay. It's probably the simplest language of all languages that you will ever experience. It's not even considered a programming language. So it's going to be very quickly the way that we talk about it. Most of your experience working with HTML is going to come from practicing with it. I could sit here and talk to you about every single tag and how it works, but it makes more sense if you just start plugging and playing with it and seeing it in real time. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. What is the internet? Who can give me, in their own words, what is the internet?
A giant database of information shared through a network.
Absolutely. It is a bunch of servers connected with nothing but wires. A large network of wires, just like Tony said, right? These wires, this I don't know how accurate this map is, but it looks something similar to this. Wires of all types going all over the world, even undersea cables or undersea wires like you see here, right? Connecting all these different servers together, right? The internet isn't just magic. Really, it's just a bunch of cables everywhere. You just don't see them. Google Fiber is coming into my neighborhood, and they're just digging up everything. Everything. It's a mess. A lot of construction around my neighborhood. It's annoying. But it's just wires everywhere. What about a browser? What is a browser and what does it do? I'm looking for a specific term that we've used already. What exactly is a browser?
A GUI.
It is a GUI. That's exactly what I was looking for. It is a graphical user interface. That's really all it really is. But what does it do for us?
Presents data in a readable format.
Are you cheating, Tony? Did you look at my slides? Yes.
No.
Absolutely. Yeah. It presents data to us in a readable format. It presents a visual aid for us to be able to visit websites located at addresses, right? URLs. Uh, it grabs this data and visually displays it to us so we can see it, right? It is a graphical user interface of that data specifically, right? So it's pretty straightforward. It's just displaying to us a bunch of ones and zeros on the screen in a way that we can make a visual representation and understanding of it. And so we can look at our cat memes, right? So that is what our GUI is, our browser. Now, how does our browser work? Well, in layman terms, without getting very technical and talking about all the different commands, terminology, all that stuff of how data flows, uh, in the most simplest terms, on your computer, your clients, right? You open up Google Chrome. You go to Google and you put in a request for cat pictures, right? Your browser is going to take in this request. Um, it's called request. Really, it's just like a format of who you are, where you're at, what you're requesting. Are you allowed to make this request? It collects this information and it's going to send it to some server somewhere in somebody's basement, probably in like China. And then they're going to get this request and they're going to see this request and be like, all right, does this person, have access to this information? Should he have access to it? Uh, Obviously, because it's just a cat meme, nothing crazy. Yeah, we'll give him this cat meme. So it's going to go into this database. It's going to find what you asked for it. It's going to return it back to you in what we call a response. That's going to go back to your computer. It's going to be given to your browser. Your browser is going to display it, and you get your hit of dopamine for the day. So, in short, that's pretty much how this is all working without thinking about how all of this is actually talking and how complex it can get. Um, yeah, that's all it really is. You are talking to some kind of computer somewhere and in some kind of attic. Right? Here's another visual representation of it. You're clicking and clacking into your browser. You put in an HTTP request that gets sent to some kind of web server. It grabs all your information for you, sends it back, shows it to you in your browser, and you're happy. Now, what does a server do? Really, it holds all this information for you, and it gets displayed to you in using three different things: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is probably the best representation of how all three of these things work together. When we're talking about HTML, HTML is the skeleton of your web page, right? It is the skeleton of your web page. It is what sets pretty much like the foundation of how or what should be there, right? Your CSS is your styling, right? It's how it looks, right? So when you look at some kind of website and it's nice and pretty and has all these nice effects, um, the colors, how vibrant it is, the font, these, the way the buttons are made, whether they're like have sharp edge corners or they're rounded. Um, that is all styling CSS, right? It doesn't really do anything for you besides just look good. Now, CSS is easy to pick up, but I would say it's very hard to master. Um, I suck at CSS. You can learn CSS, but to be good at it, to be like a web designer, to make something look pretty and like visually appealing, so someone goes to your website like, oh, this is a nice website, and then want to stay there for a long period of time, it's tough, man. It is tough. Um, so we'll talk about CSS as well after HTML, and then finally, and probably the most difficult part of all three of these is going to be the functionality, right? So how stuff works. When we talk about functionality in terms of us, right? It's when we're able to close our hands, move our arms, run, breathe, and eat. How our body functions. That's how the websites function as well. When you scroll down and up a page, when you hover over a button and the button kind of stands out a little bit, you see a highlight border. When you click on it, your browser is actually listening to the fact that you clicked on a button. When you click on it, it should do something, right? It collects data, it navigates between pages. When how your website works, it's all JavaScript, it's all CSS, right? And all these come together to create your web page. Now, when talking about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we have a golden rule. This golden rule is called the separation of concerns. We separate the content, the style, and the functionality in their own individual files. Here we see a basic file structure of what that looks like. You have your main folder, which would be your main project. You have your HTML file, notice.html. This is going to hold the actual content of your page. You have a different file specifically for your styling, hence the .css file. And then you have a different file specifically for your functionality, which is your .js file. Why is this important? Someone tell me.
Use for reference. You can reuse the code. Different.
Close. You're in the ballpark. So think about it this way. Um, you guys don't know it yet, but when you guys start styling your website, it will be hundreds lines of code that in just styling. Now let's talk about JavaScript functionality. That in itself will also be hundreds of lines of code. Depends how complex your website is. Now, join this all together in the same file where the actual content of your page should be. It will make making new features, debugging an absolute mess. Having to scroll back and forth to see where things are talking, or how they correlate together, or to find something that you're looking for. It gets very messy very very quickly. So that's the first reason why we separate it, right? That way everything is in its own place. Additionally, uh, when I were to, if I want to scale my application and make this bigger, or if I want to change something for everything, I would hate to have to go to every single button and change the styling individually. It would be easier just to go to the style page and make one line change of code and it affects everything else that way. Um, I do it all in one shot, or just scalability, debugging, and maintenance overall is it's the real reason why we want to separate these concerns. Um, Let me see if I can show you. This is open source. I have not made this private, so I can show you a little bit. Here is the editor for our new uh, intro to coding cell paste. Here is the styling. Let's do this for just an exercise page. It's pretty straightforward, nothing crazy. It is 83 lines of code. I have the styling for the code editor. I think this was a little bit longer. Oh yeah, this is everything that goes into styling the code editor. What code editor am I speaking about? This. To make it look like this, it is 271 lines of code, right? That is everything from the scrolling, the color, the way that it changes color when I highlight over it, uh, the edges. So just that one thing, that one code editor, 271 lines of code. Now imagine this as well with everything I'm about to show you, right? So that's the CSS file for the code editor. I got three different CSS files to make this easier to style. This is the home page, 140 lines of code. That is this page right here, right? Let's look at something else. Let's look at some actual functionality. Here is the functionality of how the code editor works. That's 187 lines of code. This is the JavaScript, 187 lines of code. Here's some more JavaScript, 227 lines of code. Um, and then let's look at the HTML itself. Um, where are you at? Nothing too crazy. I think I have. This is React, so the React structure is a little bit different. Pages. code editor. There's my code editor. No, that's not it. Where is it at? Components. Here's a code editor. Here's a code editor HTML and functionality is kind of built into it at the same time. Uh, almost 300 lines of code. Do you guys get the main point of this? The gist of why we separate these files? When you start working with this code, it's going to get very quickly, very fast. And I imagine all this built in with the CSS and the JavaScript? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So it can get very, very messy very quickly. By the way, this it used to be like 600 lines of code. I downscaled this significantly. I did a lot of refactoring. It was a lot of spaghetti code, but I downscaled this significantly. So it's a lot. So it's very important that you separate the concerns, right? And you stay nice and organized because it can get very complex, especially when it's like 2 a.m. You're trying to code and you're going through all this code. It get very confusing very quickly. But all right, I think I beat the dead horse way too much. Here is the HTML syntax. So let's go straight into HTML syntax. I've said this before. It's just another fancy word for grammar, right? So the grammar structure of HTML. What does it look like, right? HTML is made into what we call tags, right? Every piece of content within the file must be wrapped in what we call tags. Now, there's different forms of tags. Every tag has a reason why you would use it, or you also have what we call semantic meaning. So, semantic tags, right? That's really what it means for. But every tag has a reason for why it would be used, even though the actual functionality of the tag might not change. We use it differently for the sake of understanding what it is being used for, if that makes sense. It'll make sense in a little bit. Here is a very straightforward example of what a tag would look like. Um, a tag has an opening tag and a closing tag normally. We'll talk about the exceptions. But a regular element in HTML has an opening tag and a closing tag. This tag specifically here is what we call a p tag, which you can guess what that is, a paragraph. Right, so a paragraph has a p to represent what tag it is. And an opening tag is represented by the opening and the closing of these anchor images here. I think like the less than or greater than arrows. This represents a tag. A closing tag is similar, but notice that the closing tag has a forward slash. So this is how you differentiate between a closing and the opening tag of an element, right? This element has an opening closing tag. This closing tag has that forward slash in here. Now, the actual content of the tag itself is within both the closing and opening tag. So here's where we see the text content. Hello world, right? So HTML, if you haven't heard it, stands for Hypertext Markup Language. This is the basic structure of how websites are built. You're gonna hear when we start talking about CSS, the term for that is called cascading style sheet, and we'll talk about why it's called that. But your HTML is gonna define the layout and the structure of your web page, right? This is where you're gonna add your title content, your paragraphs, where the images go. If you have videos, this is where you kind of structure where all that goes. When we talk about HTML, there's some key concepts that you have to take into consideration or be aware of. The very first one, which is your elements, that's the building block of HTML. These are your tags, right? Your elements. I showed you one already. That's your paragraph tag. Tags are keywords surrounded by angle brackets, right? Hence the paragraph tag. Here you see an example. Here's the P to represent paragraph. It has the angle brackets of less than or greater than. This is an opening tag. How do I know this is an opening tag and not a closing tag?
No backslash.
It
The
doesn't have
X.
that. Right, right. No slash or forward slash. I don't know what it's called. Another key concept to take into account when talking about tags is attributes. So this is additional information about an element. We're not going to get into attributes today, but you kind of saw that very quickly here. Within the opening tag, they had class is equal to nice in quotation marks. So uh, these attributes will have their own values. Think of it almost like arguments or parameters in a function. You know how like when you're defining a function, you can give it an argument of what content it could take. Something very similar to that. Uh, you can add attributes to a tag. We'll talk about classes later on. You'll see other attributes like IDs in here as well. Don't worry about it. Just know that opening tags is where the attribute would go if you added an attribute. We'll talk more about that later. The next thing to take into account is hierarchy. HTML follows a nested structure to organize the content. And we'll see that of how it makes sense or how it works in a little bit. Here is a basic structure of an HTML document. Every HTML document is going to start with what we call the document declaration. It is this tag right here. This typically tells your browser what type of file it's trying to display. This one, the document type we're working with is going to be an HTML document, right? Hence the term HTML here after the keyword of doc type. So all of your basic HTML documents are going to have this declaration up here, so be aware of that in this exact same format. I think you can put the HTML3 here. I think that's the most latest HTML. I think you can specify what version of HTML you can do. I typically don't, but I'm pretty sure you can if you want to use an older version. But no real reason to want to do that. I can't think of anything relevant. So that's the first thing that goes in your document. The next thing that goes into your document is your HTML tag itself. So here's the opening tag of your HTML. Oh, what the heck? There we go. Here's the opening tag of your HTML. And here's the closing tag of your HTML, right? Your HTML tag should enclose the entire content of your file, right? It's what's specifying that, hey, everything within this file will be HTML. So be aware of that. So the first thing, once again, has to be the declaration, followed by the HTML tag that's going to enclose the entire content of your web page. Next, there's two important things that you need. One is the head, and the next one is the body. The head tag is where you're going to put all important information, like what type of language you're working with, the size of your screens that you're going to be working with. If you're using any specific font, you might want to put this here. Um, this is where you're going to put the connection between your CSS and your JavaScript files. So any important like setting that your web page should follow, it's going to go in the head tag. Notice they have a tag already here. It says title. If I'm correct, if I remember off the top of my head, this is talking about your tabs. You know how your tabs, you can see here like a brief description of what you have open. That's their title, right? So that title tag is going to change the setting for your web page for your tab bar. So be aware of that. So that's what the title is doing, right? So that's what head is supposed to be taking in all the settings for your web page. Now the actual meat and potatoes of your HTML is going to go into your body. Notice that all these tags have an opening and closing. Here's an opening for head and the closing for head. Here's the opening for body and the closing for body. In this order, right? This is the hierarchy for it. Declaration, the HTML, and then head and body, right? They get nested into each other. Head will come first and then body. Within your body, you see here, there's an H1 tag and a P tag. And H1 tag has the opening and the closing tag. Same thing with the P tag, has the opening and the closing tag. Within both of these tags, you see the content itself. Once again, the doc type declares the document type as HTML5. The HTML tag is the root element containing all other elements. The head tag contains metadata like links to style sheets in the title, and your body tag contains the visible content of the web page. So very quickly, let's give this a try. I want you guys to go ahead within this intro to HTML. I want you to create a new file. Call this index.html. Now, you might think to yourself, Roger, do I have to memorize this every single time? No, you don't. I have a nice little shortcut for you all. While in your HTML file, all you're going to do is press the exclamation mark, and then you're going to see you get a drop down. You get one exclamation mark and three exclamation marks. If you click or you just press tab while it's highlighting over the exclamation mark, it's going to give you a border template of what a basic HTML document should look like. Right off the bat, you see we have the declaration. We have the HTML tag that encloses everything else. It even has the language already set to English. We have the head tag. It has some basic stuff like the character set you're using, the viewport, width, height, and scale, and your title set to document. There's nothing in the body. It's blank and straightforward, right? So this is your basic template of what an HTML document should look like. If you just remember to use the exclamation mark every single time, you'll have the template, or just memorize it, whichever one you want to do. But this is what a very basic and straightforward HTML document looks like. This is how I start all my projects or any work that I require for any HTML document. You can't go wrong with this. Do I have any questions so far about anything that we have covered? Cool. Thomas, you good?
Yep, I'm good.
Good, good, good. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about these HTML elements. Once again, we have the opening tag. This indicates the start of the element, right? Afterwards, after the opening tag, you have the content itself, right? So the information that's going to be displayed. And then you have the closing tag. So we saw pretty straightforward examples. One of them is the headers, right? Header tags go from H1 to H6. H1 is the biggest one. The higher the number, the smaller the text will look like. I'll show you that in real time in a little bit. There's different header tags that you can use. But notice how it's shown here. You have the opening tag, the closing tag, and then the content itself within it. You might also encounter as well self-closing tags. So for the most part, most tags are including an opening and a closing tag, but you also have self-closing tags. A prime example of a self-closing tag is your image tag. The image tag is an example of a self-closing tag. Now, how does that look like? That looks like this. There is no closing tag. There's only an opening tag, and within the opening tag, the forward slash is put at the very end, right before the last angle bracket. This is what's known as a self-closing tag. Here's another version of that. Here's the break tag. This one creates a new line on your page. Notice that it is the content of the tag itself, and then like the self-closing forward slash within that opening tag. So here is the opening and closing tag, and here is a self-closing tag. Right, so two different versions of this. There's not a lot of self-closing tags. Image is definitely one of them. The other one I can think of off the top of my head is going to be the input tag, but we'll see that in real time in a little bit. Don't worry too much about how source works. These are attributes that go into this tag. The image tag obviously needs to know what image is going to display, whether it's going to be the file location or a URL link. That's where you put here in source. This alt attribute is in the event the image is broken and doesn't work. Let's say like the file is missing or the link is broken. then there should be something that it should be displayed in the event the image doesn't work. That's what alt is for the alternate, where you would put a description here. Have you ever gone to a website and it's supposed to show an image, like a dog image? Instead of the image, it shows like a broken looking file and it shows like some text. That's what the alt is doing. Here's another self-closing tag, the input tag, as I mentioned. Right here's the self-closing aspect of it. There's a couple of attributes it takes, like what type of input. This is a text input. These are like your boxes that you type in. Right, this is a text input box. There's other input forms. We'll talk about them and mess around with them. You can add placeholder content. So if you ever look at a box that says like first name and it's like, grayed out, and you start typing and it disappears, that's how you add a placeholder, by adding this attribute in there. Don't feel like you need to memorize all this right now. I'm just kind of talking to you about different tags. And then there's the metadata. This one is a little bit unique. It's not exactly a self-closing tag, but it is a tag. Notice there's no forward slash in it. So there's different tags here. These are the most common ones you'll see. The regular tags, you see the self-closing tags, and then you see a tag like metadata. Now here's the common use tags that you're going to be using a lot. The first one is going to be for headers or any form of heading, right? It's the H1. I mentioned to you guys, it ranges from 1 to 6 for different levels of heading. The smaller the number, the bigger the text, right? The bigger the number, the smaller the text. The other tag you use a lot is going to be your P tag for text content. You'll also be using a link tag. So whenever you click on something that has a link, like that, the hyperlink, you create that by using it's called an anchor tag, to be specific. The A represents the term anchor. You put the href here, which is supposed to be the link where that link should take you to. You wrap this around your text or whatever you're trying to make a hyperlink into. It's one of the common ones you'll use. You'll use images as well. Here's the image tag. We talked about it earlier. Another common tag you're going to be using is going to be lists, right? So we have two versions of lists. We have ordered lists and we have unordered lists, right? So bullet points or numbered, depending on what the content is. If you're trying to create like the instructions of how to bake a cake, then you would probably want an ordered list from start to finish, step 1, step 2, step 3. If you're just trying to create like a grocery list, that might be an unordered list. There's list items, which I'll show you how to use this. The next thing you'll also see is going to be divs, which is short for division. This is used for grouping content. Um, we'll talk more about this later. Really, it's just like, you might group the content for like, this is my header, this is my body, this is like my footer, right? You would separate this content by using divs. We'll talk about how this works in a little bit. It's nothing complex. We talked a little bit about attributes already. Tags can be given attributes. Different tags have different attributes they can take in. For example, the anchor tag will take the href, right? Because it's supposed to be a link. Not every tag will have an href attribute to it. Target, I believe this represents how it should work when you click the link. Should it change the current page you're on, or should it open up a new tag? I think that's what the target attribute does for the anchor tag. So there's different attributes that you'll see there. I don't know every attribute off the top of my head. I know the ones that I use often. Don't be embarrassed to Google different tags for different things or attributes. It's gonna happen, especially starting off. Oh, I was correct. Target determines how the link opens. I knew it. See, I'm never wrong. All right. We talked about setting up an HTML document. So I showed you how to set up the boilerplate, but I need a couple things to be installed in VS Code before we begin. Right, here are the list of items. So what you're going to do for the next 10 minutes, or probably less, I need you to open up the extensions market on your VS Code. That's going to be on the left side taskbar. It looks like Tetris blocks. You're going to click on that. It's going to open up a marketplace. It should all be free. None of this is going to cost you any money. But the very first one, for sure, that I need you to download is gonna be Live Server. So I need you to look for the Live Server extension. I already have it installed, but it should be this one that you see on my screen. Um, it looks like this signal image. There's two of them. One has the five. Don't get the one with the five. Get the one above it. Actually, now it's making me think. Is this a new one? Hmm. I'm not quite sure. How many downloads this one has? I don't know. Hmm. Oh, 67,000. Nah, get this one for sure. This is new. I don't know when this one came out. It came out not too long ago. But yeah, you want to get grab this one live server. We're gonna use live server to launch a development server on our computer so we can mess around with our web page and see it change in real time. The next one I need you to install is gonna
Yeah.
be Prettier. Yes.
So mine is, I already have that installed, but now it's asking if I want to install in WSL Ubuntu. Should I install it there as well?
Yes. All right. After live server, I want you to get Prettier. This is a code formatter. It's going to format your code like indentations, line breaks, spacing. It makes coding a little bit easier instead of having to spend time trying to format your HTML stuff. So Prettier is going to help you a lot with that.
Can you show
Quokka,
which can you show
yeah,
which one? There's tons of them.
thank you for that question. Absolutely. This one here, Prettier Code Formatter. It has 60.4 million downloads.
Okay.
For all these, it should be the one with the most downloads. This one definitely is by far. I think second place has like 3.6. Doesn't even come close to the 60 million downloads this one has. This one's the best one for sure. Code Formatter. So these two are probably the most useful ones. Quokka, I don't remember how this one worked off the top of my head. I have it installed. I'm pretty sure if I turn it off, I'll probably realize what it's doing, and I'll hate the fact that I don't have it. I just know I installed it a long time ago. Quokka is a good one, used for debugging apparently. Rainbow CSV. This one you won't see the effects of it until later in our course. But this is going to help you when working with CSV files to separate the different columns. So download Rainbow CSV. This one looks like this. 15.1 million downloads. Rainbow CSV. And then the last one, which is helpful as well, is the VS Code icons. It's gonna look like this. It has 22.1 million downloads. This one, all it really does, it changes or it adds an icon next to your files to make it look prettier. So, for example, look at my files right now. You see how I have like the five here next to the HTML documents? It's supposed to represent HTML5. Um, for the Python files, it shows a Python logo, right? So it lets me know very quickly that I got a Python file. It's just for quality of life. It helps you differentiate what different files are without having to read the how it ends, right? For every single one. Whether it's a .py, .js, .html, I can tell by the logos very quickly. So it's a helpful tool to have the VS Code icon.
Just to verify the Quokka, is that the one with the purple icon or is it Quokka.js?
Let's see. I don't have it installed here. But it would be the Quokka.js.
JS. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Let me install this bad boy. All right. Now, to test it out before we go into the states one, what I want you to do is I want you to in that index.html file we had earlier, I want you to right click it, and you should have the option now that says open with live server. Right? You should have this option after you install live server. If you don't have it, your other option is to on the bottom right, you should have click to run live server. What it's going to do, it's going to open up this application here that says open in browser. It's going to run this website or this file in a port. You're going to click on open in browser. Mine's messed up, so I always get this file directory. I have to fix it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to that lecture, which is lesson 2, intro to HTML. And there we go.
Can you show that bottom portion again?
Can also I was trying to retrieve the file from I was trying to clone the Git repo again because mine deleted for some reason. What was the trick to get the boilerplate code for the HTML?
Exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark. Oh, what if I have a damn, I have a IntelliSense off? It won't come up.
No shit.
Just exclamation mark, that's it.
Yep, you'll see a drop down button.
I got nothing. Yeah, it's probably because of
Mm,
IntelliSense.
you think so? Let's see. Is mine off? It should work. I guess I don't have it on. I thought I had it off. Pretty sure I turned it off. What did I turn off last
Hmm.
time? Mm, 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 mm.
Should I just enable that one, the TypeScript IntelliSense?
Let's see. It's supposed to be suggestions. Hold on. Control Shift X. No. Let me pause the recording. So here is my basic boilerplate HTML document. I'm gonna go ahead and open this bad boy with live server. I can right click it, or I can press well, it's already open. Let me close it up. Press on go live. Now, this should take you directly to this file. Unfortunately, actually, let me try something out. Let me try the new live server. I wonder if that will help. Live. Live server can be kind of annoying sometimes. It used to work on my other computer, but this one doesn't want to work. And let me see if I can turn off the other one. Disable. Okay. No, it still sucks. All right, it is what it is. All right. When I click open with live server, what it did here, unfortunately, on my other laptop it works fine. It opened up my workspace. My workspace currently, if you've noticed, I am inside of my FOP repository, which has all the um, lessons that we've been talking about. So that's really what it opened up right here. So unfortunately, I have to navigate to the file. What this should have done is when you right click the file directly, it should have only opened up the HTML file. I'll try to find a solution for you guys because it's really annoying for me too. But I know it's in lesson 2, so I'm going to go to lesson 2, and I'm inside of intro to HTML. So I click that, and it takes me to my empty file. Right, pretty straightforward. Um, Now, for the remainder of this class, what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and I'm going to share the screen with my VS Code, right? And you're going to want to do this for whenever you're working with HTML, JavaScript, CSS files, because you want to see as you code, you can see in real time the changes that are happening in your HTML. So not mandatory, but I highly recommend you get an additional screen if you are working on your desktop. You only have one screen. Get a second one, even if it's a cheap one. It makes life easier. Do you need it? No, but it can get very annoying. I have three technically. I have my laptop and two other ones. That it's something I feel like I still don't have enough screens. But yeah, so recommend it. You don't have to. It's a quality of life change. Oh yeah, see, Tony knows what's up. It makes coding so much easier. And I like having one for my code, one for my application, and then like a third one for like ChatGPT if I gotta ask it questions. It helps. So definitely invest in an additional screen if you can. But here we go. Let's go ahead and try to add something. So the very first one that we talked about was going to be the H1 element. So I'm gonna say H1, and when you close the opening tag, thanks to the extension that we have, it should, I believe it's the extension that's doing this, it should auto-complete for you. This helps a lot, especially with working with tags. It's really annoying, especially when you have a lot of text and you have to go to the very end and then, um, add a closing tag. But by typing out the opening tag for the H1, it automatically closed it for me. And it put my cursor in the middle between both tags. And I'm going to go ahead and say this is a header 1. And you can see here that it auto populates on that page that I have opened up on my browser. That's all thanks to Live Server. It's letting me temporarily run a development server on my browser on my computer so I can develop my web application. So you're going to want to use Live Server throughout your entire time as a developer, specifically, very specifically, through our course. I don't know of any other stuff that other people might use. I know that this is what I've used since I've started coding. Uh, and you saw the downloads on VS Code, so other people use this too. So it's great for live, development as you go through, so you can see in real time what's happening with your code. So we can experiment with this to mess around with the tags. This was an H1 element. Let's go ahead. I'm just gonna put H header 1 here. Header 1. The next one's going to be an H2 element. So we can see a difference, header 2, right afterwards. Notice the size difference with a different tag. For a H3, um, it's even smaller. And as you progress through the sizes or numbers on your headers, you see that it's getting smaller and smaller. In total, there are 6 of these. So I'm going to do all 6. So you can see why you would use one or the other. Right? Huge size difference. Now, typically, you do not want more than one H1 element. Your H1 elements typically reserve as kind of like what's supposed to grab the attention of your application, your title page, your logo, whatever it may be, right? Their call to action on your page. Next, you have like maybe title parts. At different components of your web page might be H2s or H3s. Um, you know, be very careful how many H2 elements you have, specifically H1. Um, you know, there's a whole like art to this really. And it's more of a web design thing of how, the type of fonts you use, where you use different fonts and sizes in different places to grab the attention of your user for different points, right? If you have H1 elements everywhere, the user doesn't know really where to focus at. So it's a whole art. I'm not gonna get into it. Just uh, you know, use your I guess your best knowledge or intuition of where you want to put these headers. But you do have this to your ability. You have different headers to use. The next one that we have here at our disposal is going to be our paragraph tag. It's going to be a very common one. Uh, this is a paragraph to discuss content, typically somewhere around 5 to 10 sentences maybe. Uh, this is very common, right? To have paragraph tags to display text. When working with HTML elements, you'll start getting this right here, where it starts maybe going past your VS Code page, and it can get really annoying to have to scroll left and right. A way to fix this is, I believe, what's a shortcut? I don't know the keyboard shortcut off the top of my head, but if you open up your tab up here and you go to, oh, it's Alt Z. Okay, it's Alt Z. If you click Alt Z while in your VS Code, it'll word wrap everything in your VS Code. Or you can go to the top left, click on View, and you'll see word wrap right here. That's so if you have long paragraphs or long pieces of text and it's overflowing and going past your screen and you can't see it, you have to scroll left and right. You can word wrap it so you can see it better. Uh, but when you expand it, you see that it still stays on one line. It's really just for to make things easier as you when you view it. Let me zoom in a little bit. Cool. So that's your paragraph tag. Now let's look at the readme a little bit real quick to see what we're working with. Let's look at list items. Right, we talked about list items. I'm gonna make a list item. So we have two different ones. We have unordered list, which will be the very first one I'm gonna do here. I do open and close tags. And after I open up and close the unordered list, what I do is I put a space between these, right? So a line. And the reason for that is because the way that list item works is you need to specify what type of list you're using first, whether it's unordered or ordered. And after you specify the type of list, then you pass in the list items. For example, I have li for a list item. I'm gonna say bread. I'm gonna say milk. I'm gonna say eggs. Right? This is a grocery list. So first and foremost, you have to specify what type of list you're using. This is an unordered list. I don't have any like hierarchy of which one takes priority of what I need. I just need to list out the items for my grocery list. And then the actual individual list item is done by using the opening and closing tags for li for list item, right? But why did I move the unordered list at the bottom in its own individual line? Well, picture this. What if I had it like this? How complex is this to read? Right?
Super complex.
No, yeah, it can get very complex and very difficult to read. It doesn't change anything. Look, it's still here, but I can't read this right. I don't know where stuff starts and ends. I could keep it like this, but it's not readable for a developer. So typically, the way that you structure your HTML elements, when you start adding things inside of other tags, you do it as I showed you earlier. You have in the opening tag and the closing tag, you separate these into different lines, and anything that's going to go within here gets added to its own individual line, indented to the right to specify to the user or developer that there's something between the opening and closing tags of our list, right? This is indented to the right, so I know this is within the inside of this unordered list. Does this make sense? Cool. No feedback is good feedback. So let's go ahead and move on. That's my unordered list. Now, for an ordered list, I use the OL. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and separate the opening and closing tags, and then make some space for my list items. And this can be something like instructions, like how to bake a cake. Actually, I don't know how to bake a cake. How do what's a good instruction? Uh, uh, oh dang, I'm putting myself in the spot.
How to make a list.
How to make a list. Yeah. Item number one. Select your list type. right? And notice how this time instead of bullet points, I got numbers, right? So whichever list you use, ordered list or unordered, is going to specify what type of bullet points you're using. You are able to edit these using CSS. These are its default, so just be aware of that. You're not just constricted to what this is giving you. Um, but as you add more items in here, um, the number automatically increments. So you have the ability to make ordered or unordered. All right. Uh, Another one that you're going to be using very often is going to be your input tags. So let's try an input tag. This is one of your self-closing tags, right? By default, it's going to resort to a text box, as you saw here. I didn't specify anything in here, but by default, it gave me a box, right? Now, I don't know off the top of my head HTML tags of every specific input variation, but let's go ahead and check it out. I like to use W3 Schools. It's a great reference website. Here's the input tag. There's different variations of it. Type text. Let's see. Button, checkbox, color, date. Let's mess around with some of these, right? So the very first one that you saw here was text. So you would within here add an attribute that says that's called type. It's equal to, and then it automatically opens up some quotation marks for me, and I can say text. And that gives you the attribute of text. Now you don't see anything visually here change, because as I mentioned, by default it's a text box. Where it becomes different is when you give it something like checkbox or button, right? I can change this from text to checkbox, and you'll see here that it goes from an input box to something that's checkable, right? So by changing the type, it changed what type of item I'm using. Let me zoom in a little bit for you, Alex. Does that help? I can't see. But yeah, so there's a checkbox. I can do something like, I think radio one. Yeah, radio button or radio is the circular checkbox. I don't know why it's called radio. Don't ask me. Um, I think I can do button, but typically I wouldn't use the button one for this. I would use a button tag. Uh, but you do have button. Let's look at something like date. Date's a good one. Type of date. You get something like this. It changes it to a date time box. This is like the default variation. You can obviously edit this using CSS to make it look nice. So here's your date input box. Range is an interesting one. It gives you a slider bar, if I remember correctly. There you go. Here's your slider bar. So there's different ways to receive different input. Now, you don't have to know all of these. As long as you know what you want, a quick Google search, as you saw here, got me to all these different options. Um, so I don't know these off the top of my head. Only the ones that I used often. Email, I don't use it often, but I think this one comes with some built-in restrictions, which is pretty cool. So, email will probably give you an error if it's not in email format. But input is definitely a very useful tag to use. Um, the other tag that I want to show you here is going to be the image tag. The image tag is another self-closing tag. Actually, let's keep the let's tag here for references so you guys can see it. Let's go into the image tag next. Now, you won't see anything visually here. Nothing's showing for you. But if I add an attribute of alternate, I can say something like dog. And you'll see here that there's not an actual image, right? I don't have a hyperlink or I don't have a URL, is what I meant to say. I don't have some JPEG image that I'm referencing. And because of that, I added the alt attribute. And because it doesn't have the image to display to me, it's going to display to me the alternate text I have here. This is typically in the event the image link is broken, right? And here is your image with that cut corner to specify this is a broken image. So let's add an image. Um, let's go ahead and look for one. Let's go with like dog image. I have a golden retriever, so let's go with these bad boys right here. Um, copy image address. Copy link address. Which one do I want to use? I'm gonna say with copy image address, and let's say source is equal to. Let's see if this works. Oh, hey, it worked. It's really big. Uh, but here is my awesome looking dog picture that I'm using a link from the internet to display. This is the cutest dog ever, dude. Oh my god, that's awesome. Makes me remember when my dog was a puppy. Now he's just a monster. But yeah, so I added that image in here with using the source attribute, right? So instead of showing me that alternate text that I put in there, it's now showing me the link. Now, what happens if this link breaks, right? Let's remove something from in here. It breaks, so therefore it shows me the alternate display of the text of dog. And really, this should be like something like golden retriever, right? But yeah, that's how the image tag works. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, so that's popping up right next to the input. Is there a way to make it go to the next line like we do for like Java or other things, or is that going to be in the CSS part?
CSS.
Gotcha. Okay. I was just wondering because like all of our lists and paragraphs and everything like that showed up all differently. So I didn't know if it was something that we needed to like, I don't know, contain within a div or something.
Yeah, you will put in a div and stuff. The way you format your HTML and the CSS can play a huge part of it. All right. So that takes care of that. What's next? Image. Okay. We'll leave it at that for now. The next part of this lecture involves you guys. Actually, I guess it's me. Never mind. Let's do the state HTML. Uh, so once again, let me just show you this for one more time. We have the image, we have input, we have list items, we have headers, paragraph tags. There's gonna be some other tags that you see here that are pretty similar. It's more of a semantic meaning. And a good example would be something like section. Or no, not section, span. What is a span? 2 to 3 sentence text. It's a text tag. It's a text tag very similar to the paragraph. But why would I use a span over a paragraph? Well, it's more of a semantic meaning. They have the same functionality, but a span is typically a smaller amount of text, typically about 2 to 3 sentences. A paragraph is typically 5 sentences or more. So when would I use one or the other? Is it wrong to just put everything in paragraph tags? Not really. Uh, they will still do the same. They're it's the same thing, but the name of it is different to represent the reason why you would use one or the other. Because if a piece of text is no more than 2 or 3 sentences, then technically it should belong to a span. That just lets you know what type of element or content it has. Will it break anything? Not at all. Now, why can it become important? Well, it starts getting into some more complex things like not only like let's say readability for other developers, but search engine optimization is something. It's not like a huge impact. It doesn't have a huge impact on search engine optimization, but the way that you structure your application will impact your search engine optimization. Who knows what that is? I figure Tony does. Okay. Search engine optimization is it's how high your website is rated in a search engine. Think Google. Let's say, when you Google your nearest chicken sandwich store, what comes up first? Or if you Google, like, massage parlor, or universities, or barbershop, what comes up first is going to be determined by a lot of different factors. One of those factors is how their application is built. If they have a really built web application, uh, they have the structure of their HTML is structured correctly. They have tags using it correctly. If the links aren't broken, if it's up to date, this will make that application uh, have a higher rating in a search engine. Therefore, it will be placed higher on a search engine result. That's how websites end up being the first item to appear on Google. And that's very important. We all know it. When we Google stuff, we'll typically click the first thing because we think like, oh, this is the most popular one. Absolutely, for a reason. Now, there's other stuff that goes into it. Like how many people are talking about your business, right? Whether on Facebook, social media, Reddit. How many times does your name of your website appear? Can impact your search engine optimization. It's a whole science in itself, but it's worth noting that how you build your website will impact your search engine optimization in the long run. So just be aware of that. That's one thing your tags can play a huge part in. Um, Specificity as well, inline styling can affect it. There's a lot of things that go into it, so just be aware of that. Um, but yeah, so span, you might see stuff like div or section. These really mean the same freaking thing. It's just boxing things together. For example, everything in a header will probably be in its own div, right? So I might move all these H elements inside one div, and then I might put like another div for the body content into its own independent div, right? Therefore, kind of sectioning off different parts of my web application into individual tags. A division really is just a box where I'm categorizing things into. Doesn't make a huge difference right now, but once you start giving these things like classes, you'll see the difference, right? A div is pretty much the same as a section. It could mean the same thing. You might see a tag called article. Article really is just another div tag, but what do you think the article is used for? Articles, right? So another semantic tag. All right. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna delete this index.html file. You guys don't have to delete it. I'm deleting it because I think it's gonna give me some weird functionality with these states.html if I have two different HTML files in the same directory. Live server is weird. All right. So let me go ahead and open up my states.html. I'm gonna go ahead and add some word wrap in here so I can see my text. There we go. There is nothing here in my HTML file. It's just a bunch of raw text. I see here on the right side of my page, nothing is formatted. It's just going back to back. Even though that's not really how it is here in my HTML file, that's how it's being structured on my browser. So this is my instructor-led example. What's the first thing that I probably want to do if I want this to be compliant to an HTML document?
Use your doc type.
My doc type, really, I wanted to add everything that a basic HTML document needs. My
Yeah.
doc type, my HTML tag, header, and body. Now I can take it one step at a time, or I could just do the exclamation mark and then get the boilerplate in here. And the next thing will be to slowly start implementing all this inside of body, which I can just kind of put in here real quickly and structure as I go. But this should all be within its own tag. Notice it already changed. You don't notice it, but maybe you don't notice it. the text actually changed in font and spacing. It looks a little bit different. Nothing crazy. But all right. Looking at the text here, how should I structure this? What do you think this first part is going to be here? This first part of text. What tag do you think it should belong to? I hope everyone's excited to be here for our HTML demonstration. We'll be creating a list of states. This piece of text, what type of tag should it belong to?
A spanner.
A span or a paragraph, absolutely. Let's go with span
Paragraph.
since that's what you said. We can do that. We can do span, no biggie. But there you go. I create a span. I put the stuff in there. I don't see a noticeable difference, and that's okay. Let's look at the rest in a bit, see if that helps. After this, what do I see? I see a list. Well, it's supposed to be states, but it's not. Uh, but it's a list of something, right? What do you think this should be in?
Unordered list.
Unordered list, absolutely. Let's go ahead and move this within here, and this should all be within what?
List items.
Yeah, list items.
How are you doing the selection like that?
Magic. And there you have it. Um, yeah, I'll show you. So here, notice I'm currently my cursor is on Chicago. I'm gonna hold Alt. That'll keep that selected, and I can left click on other stuff, and it'll highlight multiple things. If you accidentally highlight somewhere where you don't want to highlight, press that part again, it'll unhighlight it. But I'm able to select multiple lines at a time, and then as I'm typing, it does it for all the lines. And I did it for the left side and the right side, so I can put everything within opening and closing tags. But now everything's within its own list item. And notice that it changed the formatting already. Um, this is on its own, within its own span. I got my cities within their own unordered list and individual list item tags. The next part here, what tag should this belong to?
Paragraph.
Absolutely, we could definitely do a paragraph here. So we'll say p tag. I'm gonna go ahead and highlight all this, press Alt, and use my arrow keys to bring it in here. That is within its own tag. Notice it separates itself from the other part of our text here. And the last part here, I think there's a footer tag. Yes, there's a footer tag that we can use for our last piece here, which is if one of your friends is interested in Platoon, tell them to check our website. Now, reading this piece of text, what can we definitely add in here that could be very helpful? If one of your friends is interested in Platoon, tell them to check out our website.
URL.
What?
URL.
Yeah, a hyperlink, right? We could definitely use a hyperlink. Where can I put the hyperlink? On the entire list? Should I use it on the word Platoon on website? There's no wrong or right answer here. It's really where you want to put it. We could probably we'll use website for now. Now, how can I add a hyperlink? Well, if I want to just do it specifically around the word website, I would come to the word website and I would add the anchor tag around the word of website, opening, closing tag. And then I would give the attribute for href. And I would give it a link for Platoon. And let's go ahead and look for Platoon's website. Let me just copy and paste this. And then I'm going to paste this in the href section. And now, when I click this, it takes me to their website. Now, it's all scrunched up right now. That's okay. And yeah, it can do that for me, right? Notice when I click it, it takes me away from here. I could change that by adding another attribute called target, and I will give it uh what do I do blank. So underscore blank. And now this should create a tab somewhere. Oh, it didn't. Okay. We hate me. Oh,
Isn't it?
blank D. My bad. Okay. There we go. I had put an extra character in there by accident. But it opened up that different tab, right? So I changed the way that worked. So that's definitely how we could use that link in there. We can also take this up a notch and maybe add an image tag in here. I can say something like source is equal to, and let's look for Platoon's logo. Do I have it in here? I think I added it here. I do. Look here. I think in your file directory, it should already be here, Platoon logo.png. So you would quite literally type that in, Platoon logo.png. The file location for it, because they're the same file, I don't have to specify a file path. If they were in different file locations, I would have to specify how to get to that image. But because they're in the same location, I just specify the name of the file, which is Platoon logo.png. And it adds a nice little logo in here. I might want to put this at the very top if I wanted to make some kind of header. But yeah, any questions? Right on. Okay. Mm. So finishing off the README, we did the link using the anchor tag to Coplatoon's website. We added the image. Um, I mentioned to you divisions or divs or in semantic tags in generals. Um, Here are some of these semantic tags. Header, right? Defines a header for a document or section. That's just another div, but specifically used for header sections. Nav, that's a navigation, like nav bar is a really good place. Sections, articles, aside, and footer. All of these are semantic tags. They're really just divs. They just call something differently because they're used for different purposes. Semantic tags have a huge impact on search engine and accessibility. But this is what your final product should look like, kind of, if you went and use semantic tags. You can kind of go put stuff in a header, in sections, the footer, right? We could go back and format the HTML document a little bit better if you want to practice with the semantic tags. Back to the PowerPoint. So we talked about some of the tags. We had an article. We talked about anchor, paragraph, spans, order, and unordered list. The different types of heading elements. Divs. Form is a very interesting one. Form is typically used to gather information, right? So think like a sign up form when you signed up for Google or Facebook, or when you're doing like a survey. That might be a form that's grabbing information. There's a lot more tags out there. So those are just kind of the basic ones that you might see. Once again, I enjoy W3 schools because they have a little bit of everything. At the very top, you can see the nav bar. There's HTML, CSS, JavaScript, C. It gets into the programming languages like Python, Java, PHP, and even other frameworks like React. React, Django, those are the frameworks you'll be using in our program. for HTML, there's a lot of stuff that you can use. Um, HTML elements might be where you want to check out the different tags. There's some basic ones in here. Mm, if there's something you're looking for specifically, you can look for it. CSS, colors, headings, attributes. Let's look at forms, right? Once again, like a form to receive information for user input. The forms will take input tags. Another one I forgot, label. Label was another good one. That's really to mainly use with input tags. For example, let's say I'm gonna use a form tag here, and this form tag I'm going to add an input tag. Um, Type is going to be text. I'm gonna add a placeholder attribute in here. It's gonna be first name. And notice that you see the grayed out in there. Uh, I can add a label here. How do I use the label? I haven't used it in a while. For first name. Okay.
So this doesn't break like the stuff that you're adding under the footer. That doesn't like break the code, so to speak.
Why would it break the code? What's the
Isn't
question?
like isn't the footer like the bottom? There's
It's a
no like
semantic tag. It's a div. It's another div that we
got it.
used earlier, right? It's just
Okay,
called
right.
footer
As long
because
as
we
it's
would
within the HTML tag.
right.
Okay.
I- It won't break anything as long as it's within this body tag here,
Understood.
right? If the footer is just a semantic tag, it's just div, but it's called something
Mhm.
different to specify to a developer that this is where you would put footer information, right?
Got it.
No, that's a good question though, right? So notice that I added a label next to the input tag, right? That's kind of how labels are used um, to represent different parts of your input tag and what it should go in there. You could use placeholder to put stuff in there, but label is another useful one to have. First name, let's go with last name, and then we could do an input tag in here. Type text, right? And so on and so forth. At the very end of this, you might do something like a button, right? Button. Here's my button. There's nothing in there. So let's say something like submit. Here's my submit button. And then you would add some kind of like JavaScript. So when you click this button, it grabs the information from the input text, which we will talk a little bit more about once we get to JavaScript. But this is how you would use like the form. You would add inputs inside of here with labels and a button to grab the information. The button will be linked to the form. We'll get more into that as we progress with this class. Do I have any questions so far? Awesome. So HTML structure, we already talked about it and I showed you. But it starts with everything has to be wrapped around the HTML tag. Don't forget the doc type, the declaration at the very top. But everything in your HTML should be within the HTML opening and closing tag. Then there's two subsections that go afterwards, which is the head and the body. The head is where your metadata goes, like title. Oh, let me show you how that works. Remember the title that I mentioned here? It says document. That's because that's what I set here into document. This could be changed to like states. And you'll see here that gets updated, right? So that title affects that setting there. Cool. All right, to finish off today's lecture, give the brownies.html a try. Time is 8:29. Let's go ahead and come back at 8:40. 8:45. And then I'll have someone demonstrate. You guys can show me what you did, and then we'll cut for the day. I will see you guys in 15 minutes. All right, who wants to demonstrate what they were able to create? Pretty simple assignment, right? Okay, okay. Anyone want to volunteer? I don't need like anything long. Just 30 seconds. Show me what you got.
Sure, I'll volunteer. Let me share screen. Do you want just the HTML or the live preview as well?
Show me the live preview first, and then the HTML.
Okay. I didn't get all the way through it, but I got pretty close. So that's what I'm working with right now.
Okay. Not bad, not bad. What were you working? What didn't you finish? The picture?
Well, the picture didn't load at all, because it's not in there.
Same
Right.
here.
You just had to find the an image for it.
Oh, okay. Well, didn't know that.
Yeah, my bad.
Um, anyway, moving on. I got all the way down to the part where I needed to do the tip, the nutritional info, and then add the link. But that's all I had left to add to the body.
Okay, cool. Did anyone finish it? Okay. Yeah. So good stuff. Pretty straightforward. Really, once you understand the concept of what tags are and how they work, the structure of them, really is just knowing when to use them. The hard part with front end isn't the HTML. It's once you start adding CSS and styling. But does anybody have any questions so far about anything that was covered during today's class? Okay, awesome. Well, the last assignment that we have is at least for this lesson was the BBC example. So it's changed a lot throughout the years. This is the icon that was or that's how it looked like when we first created this lesson. Let's go ahead and visit the BBC website. Um, and it's changed a little bit, but the main point of this assignment is to recreate the BBC website. Now, we have not gone over CSS. It's not going to look like this, right? But using your very limited knowledge of HTML, I want you to look at this website and I want you to recreate uh the content of this website and how it is, right? So be able to create individual sections for like the header, nav bars, the different articles, the images. Try to get the images if you can. You can use a snipping tool, right? To get them. I don't know what is going on with this dumb page. Whatever. But try to recreate this image or the home screen as best as possible. Now, a stretch goal for you guys if you want is you can try to do some CSS and get it there if you already that head. But if you're not there, don't worry about it because we're gonna touch it tomorrow anyways. This will be your homework, kind of. It's not graded. This kind of like your stretch goal to go ahead and practice trying to replicate the website itself. Now, it doesn't have to be the BBC website. If you have a different website that you want, just make sure that you can show us the website snippet from yesterday or from today, and then what it's supposed to look like, so you can kind of compare and contrast if that's what you want to do. So whatever website. Now I'm getting dog advertisements. Jesus Christ. Um, but yeah. So whatever you decide to go with, just choose a website. You could stick to the BBC one. You can stick to the one that is here in the README. Where is it at? BBC.png. Uh, you can stick to this one if you want to just keep this one and replicate this one specifically. This was a lot more simpler, as you can kind of see. But whatever you decide to go with, just find something that you can replicate and do yourself. Um, Everyone should have something similar to this. If not, try to get something like this. It's called a snipping tool. It allows you to kind of like cut out pieces of like of your screen, um, and whatnot, and then save the images if you want to get the image for your page, and then just make sure you add it to the file. Right, you could do that. But yeah, that'll be your stretch goal. Tomorrow we'll start class with someone kind of demonstrating what they were able to do. If no one did it, then I guess we can take 20, 30 minutes to do this tomorrow. But try, if you guys have some free time, give this a try. And tomorrow we will start CSS. And depending how fast that goes, we might even get into JavaScript then. But that is kind of the go. Um, the HTML class is pretty quick. It takes the longest is HTML and CSS. I'm sorry, CSS and JavaScript. Do you have any questions about anything covered today? Awesome. We're gonna go pretty quick, as you guys can see. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.